Tracy Harrell, the owner of the Randleman Enrichment Center, a daycare center nestled in the heart of Randleman, North Carolina, had always considered the children under her care to be like her own. With years of experience nurturing and educating young minds, Tracy had seen the good and the bad, but nothing could have prepared her for the call she received one fateful afternoon. But hey, before we dive into the story, do yourself a favor and pause the video right now. Go hit that like button, and let's see if we can make this video reach 1,000 likes. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to your favorite story channel. Also make sure to ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest and weirdest stories. Trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming your way. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be amazed as we take you on an unforgettable ride. Don't forget to engage with us in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Without further ado, let's dive right in. The local police department had reached out to Tracy with a grave concern. A little girl, suspected to have attended her daycare center, was in need of a welfare check. The details were sparse, but the urgency in the officer's voice made Tracy's heart pound with anxiety. Without hesitation, she agreed to accompany the officers to the address they provided. The drive to the house was tense. Tracy's mind raced with thoughts of the little girl she might find there. Was it one of her students? Could it be the sweet blonde child with the big blue eyes who always said, "I love you, Miss Tracy," before leaving for the day? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, and she prayed silently that this was all a misunderstanding. When they arrived at the small, rundown home, an eerie silence greeted them. The house looked abandoned, with overgrown weeds encroaching on the front yard and windows darkened by grime. The officers knocked on the door, calling out the girl's name, but there was no response. Just as they were about to try the back entrance, they heard a faint, desperate cry coming from inside. Tracy's heart sank. There was no mistaking it. That was the voice of a terrified child. The door was locked tight, and the officers tried to force it open, but to no avail. Without a second thought, Tracy volunteered to crawl through a partially open window on the front porch. She wasn't thinking about the risk, only about the child who might be in danger. As she pulled herself through the window, Tracy's eyes adjusted to the dim light inside the house. The air was thick with the stench of neglect, and the walls were covered in layers of filth. The house was eerily quiet, save for the muffled sobs of the child. Tracy followed the sound, her heart thudding in her chest as she made her way toward the source. Underneath the staircase, there was a small, inconspicuous door. It was the kind of door you might not notice if you weren't looking for it. A closet, perhaps. But as Tracy drew closer, she could hear the cries more clearly. They were coming from behind that door. Tracy hesitated for a moment, steeling herself for what she might find. She reached for the handle and pulled the door open. What she saw inside made her gasp in horror. There, huddled in the corner of the tiny, dark closet, was a little girl no older than 5. Her feet were black with dirt, and her little hands trembled uncontrollably. She had bitten her nails down to the quick, leaving them raw and bleeding. Her hair was a tragic mess. Most of it had been shaved off, and what remained had been pulled out in clumps, leaving bald patches all over her head. Her face was dirty, scratched, and bruised, and there were dark, ugly marks around her neck, as if someone had tried to strangle her. Tracy's breath caught in her throat as she realized she knew this child. It was the little girl from her daycare center, the one with the blonde curls and the big blue eyes that sparkled with mischief and joy. But now, those eyes were wide with terror and pain, and they were fixed on Tracy with a look of desperate pleading. "Miss Tracy?" the girl whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Tracy dropped to her knees beside the child, her heart breaking. "Yes, sweetheart, it's me," she said softly, reaching out to comfort her. The little girl flinched at first, but then threw herself into Tracy's arms, clinging to her as if she were a lifeline. "Please don't leave me," the girl begged, her voice choked with sobs. Tracy held her close, fighting back tears. "I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere," she promised, her voice trembling with emotion. As she cradled the child, she noticed something else in the closet, a box of rat poison. Panic surged through her. Had the little girl tried to eat it in her desperation? But a quick glance at the child's mouth and hands showed no signs of poisoning. Still, the fact that it had been within her reach was enough to make Tracy's blood run cold. The officers finally managed to force the front door open and rushed to the closet when they heard Tracy's voice. When they saw the little girl in her arms, They immediately called for medical assistance. The sight of the girl's condition left even the seasoned officers visibly shaken. Her frail body was covered in bruises and burns, evidence of the unspeakable abuse she had endured. As they carried the little girl out of the house, she clung to Tracy, refusing to let go. Tracy stayed by her side, whispering words of comfort and reassurance, even as her own heart ached with anger and sorrow. How could anyone do this to a child, especially one so young and innocent? The police quickly turned their attention to the parents, Adam Bird and Crystal Carnahan, who were later apprehended and charged with child abuse, neglect, and assault with a weapon. The community was shocked by the horrific details that emerged during the investigation. How had this gone unnoticed for so long? The little girl had been a bright and cheerful presence at the daycare, but behind closed doors, she had been living a nightmare. The little girl was immediately taken into the custody of the Department of Social Services. Her recovery would be long and difficult, both physically and emotionally, but she was now safe, surrounded by people who would ensure she was cared for and loved. Tracy visited her often, bringing her toys and books, trying to bring a sense of normalcy back into her life. The child's trust in Tracy remained strong, and over time her bright spirit began to return, though the scars of her trauma would take much longer to heal. As the case drew widespread attention, Tracy found herself grappling with a mix of emotions: relief that the girl was safe, anger at the horrors she had endured, and guilt for not having seen the signs sooner. But above all, there was a deep, unshakable resolve. Tracy knew that she would do everything in her power to ensure no child in her care ever suffered like that again. The little girl's story served as a wake-up call for the entire community. It reminded everyone of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the need to protect the most vulnerable among us. Tracy became an advocate for child welfare, working closely with local authorities to provide training for daycare workers, parents, and community members on how to spot and report signs of abuse. The Randleman Enrichment Center, once just a daycare, became a beacon of hope and safety for many children in the area. Tracy continued to pour her heart into her work, driven by the memory of the little girl who had clung to her in that dark closet. She knew she couldn't change the past, but she could fight to ensure a brighter, safer future for every child who walked through her doors. And as for the little girl with the blonde curls and big blue eyes, she was eventually placed in a loving foster home, where she began to heal from her ordeal. She never forgot Miss Tracy, the woman who had saved her life, and whenever they saw each other, the girl would still say, "I love you, Miss Tracy," just as she had every day before the darkness had overtaken her life. Tracy would always smile and respond, "I love you too, sweetheart," knowing that those simple words carried a depth of meaning that only they could truly understand. In the end, love and courage had triumphed over cruelty, and that made all the difference.